Hello and welcome to episode 366 of the Stacey West podcast. You may remember me. I was once a presenter on this show. My name is Gary. I have been absent for a while, but I am back with a vengeance, and not just because we've won 5-0, because we won 4-1 the other day and I still didn't come back. Joining me this week is, we could call him my partner in crime. It certainly feels like it over the last week, but that's another matter altogether. It's Chris Lamming. How are you doing, my mate?
I don't know what you're saying about that, Gaz. That's you're throwing me in the deep end there. I'm very well, thank you. It's impossible not to be well, isn't it? After the back of an outstanding performance yesterday, it was one of those rare matches where everything just goes to plan from minute 1 to minute 90 plus.
It's always about it's all business for you, isn't it? There's never any chit chat. There's never anything friendly. There's never any banter. It's always like, oh, let's get straight into the football. It's always the same.
Well, me and Ben and me and Charlie have had lovely chats at the start of our podcast recently. I suppose it's just we
you just don't like me.
No
That's basically what you're saying, isn't it? Shocking. I was actually just looking down because viewers at home may be able to see, if I do that, the remnants of my Chinese meal from last night still on my hoodie. Those who know me know that I run. So I did a little run yesterday morning, and then we went in the pub last night, as I think was only right after such a good game. Had a couple of drinks, and unlike Chris, normally I can handle my beer, but I think I had 5 Estrellas in quite quick succession. So when I got home, the Chinese did end up on me as well as in me, which was really interesting. So come on, Chris, tell us something about your week that isn't related to football. Let's drag it out.
It's difficult, really, because Ben and myself did a podcast on Friday, and we had this exact conversation about something that happened this week. And I'll just be repeating myself. So you want me to tell you something that's nothing to do with football that literally happened yesterday or this morning, and there's not really a lot to say other than I had a lovely lie-in. Your wife baked some lovely muffins, of which I devoured. That was that. Thank you for those. And there's not a lot else to say, mate. To be honest with you, you could tell everyone, all of our lovely listeners, some really interesting stories about your week, but I've got nothing else to add other than what we spoke about on Friday.
I can't tell my stories. Just for those who are obviously where I did take a short break from the podcast for a couple of weeks. It's just been a tough couple of weeks. So thank you for those who messaged me. I don't need kind of messages or sympathy or anything. It's just been a challenging time, and apparently running 18 miles in the morning is a great way to fight through challenging times. Who would have thought it? But do you know what? We'll start there as well, because I just saw Neil Flower pop up in the chat, and he was one of the people that came to speak to me yesterday, giving me money for the raffle, which I'll promote at the end of the podcast. But it was just really nice to have so much support for my London Marathon effort. The fundraising, which I had on my screen and have since lost, is somewhere around £3,500 now. I've had some phenomenal donations. It's embarrassing probably for me to name individuals, so I'm not going to. But over the last 48 hours, one person put £271 in, another one put £200 in. Do you know what? It's unbelievable, those sorts of figures. And then when you have people putting £5 in, anything that they can afford is so gratefully received. I'll never ask or bug anybody to support me, but the work that the foundation do is second to none, absolutely second to none. I was fortunate enough to have my pitch taken pitch side yesterday before all the players came out, so it wasn't me doing Billy Big Balls, with Jasper Caldwell, who's also running it for the foundation. So there's 2 of us doing it now. Jasper looked a lot fitter than me. By that I mean physically, and he's better looking than me, to be fair, as well. So he's obviously going to smash it. But yeah, it's nice to waffle on about it without Chris or Dad going, "Oh, do you run?" like they did every time I'm running yesterday.
We say nice things to you privately.
You say nice things behind my back. Not nice things to me privately.
That's what I meant. Sorry, that's a sign of a good friend, isn't it?
Yeah, it is really, isn't it? Yeah, that's why Dave should know I'm one of his closest friends. Now, Richard Godson, I did see Richard before the game yesterday, and it'll just lead us and segue nicely into the game because Chris clearly doesn't want to chat about anything else.
So Richard, to talk about, Gaz. I'm sorry, I'd love to tell a very interesting story. There's nothing for me to say.
No. Richard Godson says, "Good evening, Chris and Gary. What about that 0-0 draw then? Because I called a 0-0 draw before the game, and it was anything but 0-0. Chris, let's jump into it after 5 minutes. We always start with team selection. I said I fancied Rico through the middle. I think on the podcast you said on the left, so I will take that as a victory. But it was just reward for Dom Jeffries, I think, that he remained in the side after what has been a really good couple of weeks, I think, for him as well.
Yes, as mentioned on Friday, I thought just kind of tactically it made sense to have some width on the left. I didn't think we would leave 2v2. Sorry, 3. I didn't think we'd leave 2v2 with their two centre forwards. And that would mean that Sean Rowan would be a bit more reserved, but we'd need more natural width on the left-hand side. Turns out we were quite happy to leave it 2v2. And Sean Rowan overlapped from when the opportunity allowed. And yeah, Dom Jeffries rightly kept his place in the team. It would have been incredibly harsh for him not to play because he's been incredibly, I think, consistent for the whole season, but particularly since Christmas, I think he's really shone. So yeah, it was good. Rico down the middle has a bit of a new lease of life, really, hasn't he? Down in that kind of number 10 role. So yeah, there wasn't many surprises with the team selection. I think it was quite a nice selection in regards to you look at that and you don't have any complaints, do you? I was particularly pleased to see Tom Hamer partner Pordy, and that's nothing against Adam Jackson, by the way. Mentioned this last week, I think, when we chatted about the Birmingham match, that prior to Birmingham felt that Jacko maybe had a tough few weeks, but against Birmingham he was a man mountain and was every inch the player that we know him to be. But Tom Hamer really impressed since his return, and I think that centre back partnership of Pordy and Tom was dominant, really, albeit them not being tested too much yesterday, but they were really comfortable. So yeah, lineup was positive. I think we can see we definitely started with a positive selection. I don't think there were too many surprises. Was there anything that took you by surprise at all?
Well, it took me by surprise that James Wilson was playing for them because I didn't realise until I did my write-up this morning, and he didn't particularly stand out. And normally I'm quite on it with ex-imps. It was pretty much as I expected. I did think we'd keep Rico in the middle, and I think Rico is a player. I think he's out of contract. He may be out of contract, but I think the club tend to have options on most of the contracts. I think Rico is a player that all of a sudden has put himself into the conversation for next season's squad. When potentially in the 3-5-2 that we were playing, there wasn't really a space for him. In his 4-2-3-1, I mean, there'll be a certain Mr. Duffy at Chesterfield wishing maybe that he had remained on loan, because if we're playing 4-2-3-1, the left side attack would have been good for him as well. But I like the formation. I mean, you and I discussed yesterday a little bit about the formation. I think it's very much like we played certain parts of the season under Michael Appleton. I mean, we played a 4-1-4-1. 4-3-3-3, but there were certainly elements of 4-2-3-1 for a while under Michael Appleton, with Tom Hopper as the main striker, and James Collins is different gravy. And I think it's actually having James Collins has allowed us to change this formation. I think it's what he brings to the striker's role. You can, when I say trust him, I don't mean that negatively towards the other strikers, but the kind of the movement and the way that he plays allows us, I think, to kind of have that kind of more creative 10 without having to put pressure on a lone striker. Whereas I think a little bit earlier in the season, probably if we were playing something like a 4-2-3-1, you might have seen a Fred or somebody like that looking a little bit isolated. So I quite like the 4-2-3-1 formation.
Yeah, I do too. I generally quite like a back three. I think people know that now, just generally in terms of preference. But I think, and I think the squad was built for a 3-5-2 for us this season. I think you mentioned about the strikers there, and I think that's a very good point about James Collins, because as much as we did have other options, there probably aren't many of the options that we have that would be capable of playing as a lone striker. And most of them in that centre forward position are either better, it turns out, elsewhere. Jovan Wakana, in a prime example, Ben House potentially being in a 10. But certainly if they're playing in the front two, they suit a 2. None of them really suit a 1. I would only argue that long-term Fred probably can suit a 1. Long-term, again, as a bit of an understudy to James Collins, but maybe not quite quite just yet. So I think you're absolutely right in that James Collins has maybe allowed us to transition to this shape more readily and more successfully. But yeah, I think this really suits us. I particularly like that we're playing like Rico in the 10, but you imagine when he's fit, Jack Morland will be a player that will potentially play in that role. Joe Gardner played there briefly yesterday as well. So what we quite like in the 10 role, which is something that you don't see too often, particularly at our level, is a number 10 that's happy to carry the ball through the middle of the pitch. It's very common to have wingers to do that, but number 10s don't tend to be particularly proficient in that. And it's really, really dangerous. It's really dangerous to defend against. It can be dangerous the other way, because if you lose you're more likely to lose the ball than if you do these quick turnovers. But from a fan's perspective, it's fun. It's fun to have, those two flying wingers and then a really, really dynamic ball carrier kind of 10 that's playing in behind a kind of been there, done it, knows what he's doing, trustworthy James Collins.
Followers of the Stacey West podcast will, of course, know that a dynamic ball-carrying 10 is one of my favourite positions on the field, that and a holding midfielder, because they will remember back to the summer of 2019, which was 5.5 years ago now, with me getting more than over-enthusiastic about signing a certain ball-carrying number 10 called Jack Payne, who I believed was going to help fire us to the Championship. Now, it didn't quite work out like that. He is currently firing Colchester United towards League One, among many other former imps. But I love that position, and it's kind of a, you could see a Paul Gascoigne playing there now. I think obviously it wasn't really the sort of position he played back in the day, but you could see him playing there like a Wayne Rooney playing there, somebody who gets on that ball, carries the ball forward, wants to excite. Look, we're 11 minutes in. It took 3 times that for us to score yesterday. So there was 30 minutes where this game was poised at 0-0. But I thought we were just playing good football. And I know we're playing good football when behind me, every so often, I just hear a as Dad purrs as a player moves a pass. But it was, I don't like the saying interpassing, but that's kind of what people refer to. There was so much little knocks and moves and kind of players peeling off their marker and little back heels and little flicks. And that's probably why it reminds me as much of Michael Appleton's 4-2-3-1 in the early days of that, because it was almost the same style of football. We looked to just have this real vigor about us. I mean, there was an early chance. I can't remember it too clearly, to be honest, but there was an early chance. I think it was Collins getting himself into the area. It just had this flow about it. And at no point from 5 minutes in onwards did I ever feel, this feels a little bit dangerous. So even up to the goal, which we'll come to, but that first 30 minutes, we just had such an unbelievable amount of control, despite not always having the ball.
Yeah, and we did actually have more of the ball than Bristol Rovers did in the first half as well, which is something that I think even Michael referenced recently, didn't he? In that there's been a very definite trend this season that when we have had more of the ball, we haven't been as dangerous. And what we did really well yesterday is we were good in both phases. We were as good as we always are out of possession, but with the ball we were really good as well. I think it was more than anything. There's 2 things actually. Confidence always helps, and it was a strong start to the game, which helps build confidence, gets fans on on your side, and there was a good atmosphere yesterday, and deservedly so. But credit where it's due. But also, it was just good decision making all over the pitch, making the right decision at the right time, because we played when we could. But I don't think there was any moments where we really forced it. We really kind of played a pass where we maybe shouldn't have. I can only remember the ball being given away in a poor area once in the whole game. I think that was in the first half. Can't remember who it was. And Bristol Rovers got an attack off the back of that. But that was literally the only time. Because we did go long at times. We hit areas at times. The good news is that when we did that, we had overloads out wide because Bristol Rovers are playing only one player out on the flank. But we didn't do it all the time. We had real variety to our game, and when we had the ball, we controlled it really well. But I was just really pleased with our decision making, because again, we're going to talk about each goal chronologically, but just quickly on, obviously, you don't expect Paul O'Connor to get 2 assists, and if you do, you expect them to be kind of headers nodded back across from the far post. But him to play 2 really good long passes, and they are passes, by the way, to set up Jovan Bakama, is outstanding. But they weren't short balls, but they were long passes into the right area. But yeah, that short interchange at times was really good. And I think all of the kind of front 5 or 6 were kind of had a role to play in that. I think the interchange and the combinations between them was really good, and it was just a good game of football. And I think maybe the fact that we were coming into the game, as much as Michael said in his press conference that this certainly wasn't the case, I think it felt around the ground that we're fine. We're not going up. We're not going down. Let's play with a bit of freedom. What you hope, though, is that when there's nothing to play or not as much to play for, the players do play with a bit of freedom and confidence. But it sometimes goes the other way, and they, whether it's conscious or not, don't always put 100% in, or it's a bit slow, it's a little bit sluggish. And it was great. It was really good from minute one. And that, even though we didn't score, we were utterly dominant in that first half an hour leading up to Jovan's goal as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was 2 minutes in was the first really good effort, which was a Tom Bayliss effort, and it just set the bar. Now, we have been guilty at times of starting well and fading, or we have been guilty at times of kind of dominating a game or looking like we're dominating a game and then not getting our just rewards. Maybe if Jovan doesn't score when he does, people begin to get a little bit nervous, but he did score. Now, we're going to talk a lot about Jovan Makama on this podcast. And I'm going to try incredibly hard not to sound condescending or smug, because we've backed him and he's had a good game and he's got a hat-trick. He'll have games where he's not so good, and the people that don't rate him will then start throwing those back in the face. So it's really not about that. But what I want to point out is when there's a player doesn't have a good game, or when Lincoln don't have a good game, the negative people will say, it's going to carry on. They won't look. They look at what it means in the wider picture. He's not good enough. He needs a loan. We're not good enough. We've got such and such next week. They'll hammer us. When we win, or when the player does well, there's then this kind of well, he should be doing that, or well, they weren't that good. And I saw that a lot. And I know this is kind of shooting off on a tangent a bit. I saw that an awful lot post game yesterday. It's a poor Bristol Rovers side. Just like it was a poor Peterborough side when we beat them 5-1. Just like it was a poor Crawley side when we beat them 4-1. Just like it was a poor Mansfield side that we beat 3-0. You've got to win these games. We've played a lot of poor sides where we haven't won these games. At some point, you've got to look and go, well, maybe they are poor, but we made them look even worse with the way we played. Now, with Jovan, it's really, really easy for someone to say, well, he should be doing that. So should he be doing that? Should he? Well, I went through all of the hat-tricks that have been scored by Lincoln City players all the way back to 1980. That's how far you have to go back for the last time an academy graduate, and that was Mick Harford, by the way, who we brought in as a 17-year-old, but that's the last time an academy graduate of any description scored a hat-trick for Lincoln City. So why is it that Jovan Makama should be doing that? So anyway, that's that. And I know that we're going to go on and on and on about Jovan. And honestly, if you don't rate him, that's absolutely fine. There's players that none of us rate, but nobody's going to knock him yesterday. On the Stacey West ratings at the minute, he's got a 9.6, and I think that's as high as Chris Maguire got when he got his hat-trick against Sunderland, and as high as Anthony Scully got when he got his 2 goals and 3 assists against Cambridge. So I'm pleased that he's getting that recognition. By the way, that 5-1 away win at Cambridge back in August 2021 was the last time that Lincoln City had 11 or more shots on target until yesterday. That's just to underline how well we did yesterday. So that first goal, Jovan gets down the wing. He absolutely terrified some of those boys. Now, I think it's was it Winkles? I may have got the name wrong. He terrorised him. He's actually a relatively young lad, I think, who's on loan from Aston Villa, isn't he? So he hasn't actually got all that many games under his belt. But he's terrorised him. He's terrorised Mola. We're looking, thinking he's going to put this across goal. It's a great opportunity to put it across goal. And do you know what the finish reminded me of? And I know it's a completely different side of the pitch. The angle's not as tight. The 4th goal in the 1966 World Cup final. You know where like Jeff Hirsch just hammers it into the top corner and the keeper's nowhere to be seen. It went in and I'm just like, oh my Lord. And whenever, sorry, I know I'm going on, but whenever a player that I think has been unfairly treated by sections of the fan base score, I don't celebrate the goal in a normal manner. And I put this in my write-up. The first thing I did, and I will use the language on here, so my apologies for anybody. The first thing I did when that went in, I went, yes, fucking Jovan, and turned around and pointed at Gav Hughes, who sits near us, who has been critical of him, who then said, well, that's what he should be doing. But it was a finish and a half, wasn't it?
It was a great finish. And yeah, let's just try and have some balance here, is that there has been an element of Jovan's game that has needed to improve, because I think that's probably been the one thing that we've mentioned all season. Because you and I think all four of us on the podcast probably are very much kind of pro Makama. But I've always understood that as much as he has some really good raw ability and some incredibly dangerous attributes, his finishing, that final action, was an element that needed a little bit of work. He's clearly been working on it, hasn't he? Because that was it was 3 really good finishes yesterday. But this one was interesting because he was running down the line. A great ball by Paudy, by the way. Really, really good pass by Paudy to kind of break a couple of lines. Jovan does well to bring it under control. I think that's what's really interesting about Jovan with his. I don't like to just talk about his size and his presence. He's so much more than just a big lad. In fact, in fairness, when he plays just as a big lump up front, he's not as effective there. He is certainly better out wide, but he is a strong lad, as well as he's quick and really good on the ball. His dribbling is his best attribute. But I think what that allows him to do is still receive the ball back to goal. But what this role allows him to do is receive the ball back to goal potentially against a fullback or a wing back, not a centre back, who you would expect not necessarily to have the same stature physically as a centre half. And it allows him just to dominate, and he did. Got himself faced up, 1-on-1, good little jink. And I think we all thought he was shaping up for a cross. He even said it himself. And then the goalkeeper just decided to leave quite a big gap at his near post. So Jovan thought, well, I'll whack it there then. And goodness me, did he whack it. But it kind of took all of us, everyone around me in the ground by surprise a little bit. Not because Jovan scored a goal. It was just like, it was looking like a crossing opportunity. And then suddenly goes, no, I'm gonna whack it near post. Thank you very much. And then it was, sometimes when you feel a goal coming, like this, celebrations are obviously always enjoyable. But sometimes when you don't really expect it, it kind of just, it's like, it hits a bit harder, doesn't it? And I was just really pleased for him, particularly for Jovan at that point. So it was, but also let's take it away from Jovan for a second and just talk about the wider performance. It was no less than we deserved as a team. Like, we absolutely deserved to go in at half time a goal. We probably deserved more than one, to be honest, before half time. But we absolutely dominated from minute 1 until minute 30 that Jovan scored, and it was a very justified lead that was taken. If we didn't go in at half time 1-0 up, it would have felt very, very hard done by.
Yeah, I mean, we utterly dominated them. They had one shot on target the entire first half. That was it. We had 11 shots, 5 on target. Again, I don't want to purely focus on Jovan's physical attributes, because he is big, tall, he is strong, he uses his body really well. Sometimes you can have that kind of physical presence and not use your body well. And another winger that used to do, in my opinion, use his body quite well in that respect, albeit at a slightly different level, was Harry Anderson. Harry Anderson had that kind of bulk, but he was also quick. But also what you've got with Jovan, he's actually quite clever with his feet. And at times it can maybe look a little bit clumsy when it isn't. I think that he's a lot better with his feet than it looks. The eye test might tell you that sometimes he gets a little bit of luck, but I don't think he does. And like you say, you called the ball from Paudy there. I completely missed that. It was an absolutely brilliant ball. I mean, it's sliced right through kind of 2 lines, sliced through their forwards and their midfield. The young lad Svinkles, I think he'd got 2 goals in 3 games on loan for Aston Villa. He got a rude awakening when he came up against Jovan. We're talking about a kid who's 21 years old at the minute.
21.
It was an outstanding goal. And it should have been 2-0 before half time. Now, there was a lot of criticism around me for McGrandles, but if you watch the move, he's carved it out himself. He's played a beautiful 1-2 with James Collins. Collins and Jeffries have both got in good positions. For me, 6 weeks ago, if McGrandles doesn't have a go there, everybody around me, and I say everyone around me, that's a generalization, because it's, you hear voices. It could be any one of kind of 80 or 90 people. But people would go, why hasn't he had a go there? Why has he tried to square it? Because we were supposedly not attacking well enough. We were supposedly not taking our chances. We were at times a little bit shot shy in the box. Ben House in particular, somebody that would carve out an opportunity and then look for a pass. So McGrandles is entitled to do it, to have his effort, I think. It's a decent save from Jed Ward as well, by the way. But it could quite easily have been 2-0. And I think at 2-0 at half time, they probably crumble. I didn't think 1-0 at half time they'd crumble quite like they did. But what did you make of the McGrandles chance?
Well, I missed this live. I had to watch this back on the extended highlights, because I went for my I thought, there's not a lot going to happen between now and half time. And it's bloody cold yesterday, by the way. I know we were forbidden from mentioning the weather when we were driving in yesterday, but it was bloody cold. It was deceptively cold. So I went to half time to get a half-time brew and customary toilet stop because it's me. And I missed it. So I didn't even know it happened until I was watching the extended highlights back this morning. And that was quite a big chance, really, wasn't it? And I think maybe without the experience of seeing it live and then having my opinion off the back of that, having just watched it online and that's it. I think maybe McGrandles hesitates slightly before he shoots. Maybe he just didn't take a touch, but took one step with his right foot before he decides to have the shot. And I think if he took a shot at that earlier moment, maybe it'd have gone in. Who knows? But it's just a big opportunity. It's just nice to see us playing good football, creating chances, being really threatening. And, McGrandles was playing in the deepest of the midfield roles yesterday, but still had the freedom to go and get involved when the time was right. And I think it's a positive to see someone like that being the extra man, having the freedom to get on the end of things, as much as it would have been nice to kind of cap the move off with a goal.
What XG do you think that chance was for McGrandles?
Like 0.15, 0.2, something like that.
0.07. So actually, 93 times out of 100, the keeper makes that save. So then, is it actually a decision where he should have squared it? Easy to say, doesn't matter. Connor played well yesterday. I've been critical of him in recent weeks. I thought everybody was excellent yesterday. So anyway, we come out after half time. You're 1-0 up. All I wanted was some consistency. And I genuinely think if this Lincoln City side had 20% more consistency than we have had, I think we'd be top 10. And because we have the ability to create and carve chances out at will. We've talked about us being high up in the XG table. I think there's only 5 teams in the division who've scored more goals than us this season, which feels utterly bizarre given some of the 0-0 draws that we've had and stuff. But we are an entertaining side when we need to be. But we also leak goals, and we come out in the second half. Bear in mind, by the way, Bristol Rovers have got some injuries. Promise on Machair is injured. Chris Martin was out yesterday. The 2 or 3 big strikers out. So you can understand them being a little bit poor going forward. But the one thing we want as soon as you come out is a goal. We need that. Go 2-0 up, you kill the game off. Now I can't remember the last time other than this season that I saw a score direct from a corner. So to do it twice, and bear in mind the XG for Tom Bayliss's goal is lower than 0.01. I think it would almost be a 0.001, like 999 times out of 1,000 you don't score direct from a corner. There's an argument probably that the sun catches Jed Ward's eyes. There's an argument perhaps that James Wilson, who misses it on the line, kind of amusing a little bit with him being an ex-imp. But there isn't really a lot of analysis you can do, is there? We're just looking to put corners deep into the back post, and this one goes in.
Yes, it's a bit of a, did he keep everything in his eyes? Oh dear. Oh well, what a shame. Never mind. Next. But it was great. Yeah, it was exactly what we wanted there, wasn't it? And maybe how it came about, the actual goal itself was unconventional. But we started the second half really quickly, got on the front foot really well, and got a corner really does. And I think it was obvious that we as much as we played some good football, we didn't have a lot of the ball in our own third. We played the ball in their half, and we really put their back line under pressure. And I think the idea behind that was win corners, win throw-ins, because they're the worst team in League One at defending set pieces, and we were the best, like statistically, and that's only been extended after this game. So I think that the idea was let's create those chances for ourselves. And first few minutes of the second half, we get a corner, and it's threatening, and it goes in. Whether it directly goes in or not, it's still a threatening ball in, and it's only a yard or so away from someone getting a head on it. So, but it just settled everyone down. Not that we were nervous, but I felt very comfortable at that point. And it was just a case of, I can actually enjoy, like properly relax and enjoy the rest of the second half now, and just enjoy being at the football without any pressure whatsoever. That's kind of how it felt at that point.
To be honest, it felt like that for me at kickoff, because I don't think we're going up or down, but now we've got 49 points. It'll feel a lot better over the next couple of weeks. Third goal came quite quickly. Got to credit Jovan again. He's showing his strength, his power down the line. He's using his clever feet. He blatantly gets fouled. Referee Paul Howard, I thought he almost blew and then waved play on. I thought the referee was excellent yesterday from start to finish. Didn't make a fuss of anything. Now, actually, when you look at James Collins' finish at the time, because I was watching the free kick, and I'm like, well, that's a free kick. Oh, we've got a chance. And you look back and the ball's in the back of the net. Watching that finish back, that is one of the best finishes I've seen at Sinsel Bank in many, many years. It is an absolutely sensational curling effort, edge of the area. Keeper's got no chance. It was just outstanding finish from a player who's going to be huge for us next season.
Yeah, brilliant finish. And I'm going to wax lyrical about Jovan here again, because he had 3 players on at one point, put one on his arse, was fouled, but he managed to get the pass. It was his pass, because I was like, wow, was it the tackle that passed it to Collins, or did Jovan release the ball just in time? He released the ball. So it's an assist, by the way, for Jovan. 3 goals and an assist in one game. But he's done so well. But the fact he attracted 3 players, I think, says it all, really, because he was terrifying in the first half. It was 2-0 at that point. He's carrying the ball again, and finds James Collins. So he, again, end product. Been critical of it earlier this season, but he had end product. He didn't just have a good attack. He found James Collins, and it was just an outstanding finish. As you say, absolutely outstanding. It's the sort of one that became quite standard on FIFA, the R1 and the square. You just bend it around. So it's one of those. It was like really overpowered for like 10 years on the FIFA. So it's one of those that, you know, it always happens on like every match on the video game, but in real life, you maybe see one of those goals or 2 of them every season. And it was outstanding finish, 3-0. Icing on top of the cherry, or the other way around, actually, cherry on top of the icing even. I thought that was that, to be honest. But it obviously was more, but it kind of felt it could have been. I was quite happy with 3. I have to say, I was very happy and very content with 3-0. But yeah, we got spoiled after that, didn't we?
I genuinely didn't think it would finish 3-0 when it got to 3-0. And just by the way, Jovan has now got 5 goals and 2 assists in 4 games. The boy is on fire. And I know there was links with Sheffield United and Leeds around Christmas. I think an article went out. You know what? People are going to start coming to Sinsel Bank to watch him when he's in this sort of form. And we're talking about this as part of a James Collins goal. But I mean, it all really started, didn't it, against Reading when he first played out wide on the right. So anyway, fourth goal. Colin McCarmer's second goal, you lose count, don't you? It's really easy when you score so many. It's the huge, big crossfield ball from Pordy again, isn't it? I mean, it's prime Lewis Monsma pass. Absolutely outstanding. And honestly, I can't talk positively enough about McCarmer. I mean, it's a good 50-yard ball. He uses his body so well. I mean, he just shrugs Svinkles off, who was taken off moments afterwards. Tight angle, absolutely amazing finish. But the one thing I like, he goes over to the away fans as if to do a little bit of and whoever it is comes across and literally pulls him away and pushes him back towards the home fans. I kind of like that. And we saw it at Mansfield with Sam Clucas as well. I do like that. But again, it was just a phenomenal goal. And I mean, he's just a player who, if he does this for the next 3 or 4 games, it's a player who's going to be mentioned more and more and more. He's got across national media rather than Lincoln City media.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And it's kind of adding the final piece of the jigsaw. You know, you've got all those other pieces. You've got lots of the jigsaws already made, but they're just those last couple of bits that we're waiting to kind of fall into place. And you know, it really felt like a bit of a turning point for Jovan, even though he's been really good in the last few games, obviously, to get a hat-trick and an assist, but also just a brilliant all-round performance. But like I said earlier, it's that final piece of the jigsaw. It is that final action. It is finding the pass. It's a great run. It is using his strength. It is having good feet, but it's doing something with it. And he's done something with it 3 times just to put it in the back of the net, and 1 time to assist James Collins. And this is a prime example of, I think, of dominating, obviously, his Winkle's outside centre-back in a 3 rather than like a left wing-back, but ultimately not your Pordy O'Connor style centre-back, which he maybe found himself up against when he plays up top as a kind of either a lone striker or a 2 as he was this season. But he's, like you say, he's just dominated the centre-back. And let's not forget, he receives the ball like with his back to goal, and then he's able to roll the centre-back, get one-on-one, and then drive forward. You know, it's one of the hardest things to do in football is to have the ball back to goal with a defender on your arse, and then somehow spin so you're then facing the goal. Like that's a tough thing to do, and he did that multiple times yesterday. But like I said, it's what's the icing on the cake is that he managed to do that, and then be a confident finish more than anything, wasn't it? It was just such a confident finish, committed finish. Didn't have to think twice. Didn't have to hesitate. It was just, know what I'm going to do, and he did it. And it was a lovely moment. Yeah, a lovely moment. I thought he was going to get brought off.
Just going to go into
that because we see some subs warming up. I think at that point everyone knows the game is definitely over. Bristol Rovers are not going to get anything out of it. We know we've won, so now it's time to make some subs, get some minutes into some other legs, get some other opportunities. I really think he was primed to come off, but you can't bring him off now. He's on a hat trick when there's quite a long way of the game left to go. Give him another 10 minutes just to give him half a chance to get in a hat trick, and that's exactly what happened, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think that he was primed to come off, and I think that Michael Squella deliberately brought 2 and 2 to give Jovan the ovation as a 1 when he came off. One little thing that really annoyed me was when we made the changes. I think it was James Collins and Dom Jeffries come off, and they were stood not 3 meters apart.
I know what you're going to say.
And Collins had to go off at the side and walk round, and Jeffries had to go across to the dugout. Now, I don't know if he had to. I don't know if the referee.
I think he chose to and wanted to enjoy the ovation, as he is absolutely entitled to do so. Yeah,
I'll tell you what there is in James Collins. There's elements of Chris Maguire, but not the knobby bits. Do you know what I mean? That kind of, you know what I mean, don't you? A little bit cocky. You know, he obviously kind of thrives off the crowd. You know, he'll tell his teammates what he's thinking, but without being a bellend about it, which is what Maguire was. You know, James Collins isn't out for James Collins; he's out for Lincoln City. So everything he does is for the team. You know, and enjoying the applause is great when you're producing game after game after game. And Chris Maguire had 1 good game. James Collins has got what now? 4 goals in 7 starts. Did we say at the beginning of the season? 5
goals in 7 starts. 5 and 11 overall. 5 and 11 appearances, but 5 and 7 starts. Yeah.
Which, by the way, is the same record, 5 and 11 appearances, that Joe Taylor had at the same time as this last year. But then he got the hat trick against Bristol Rovers.
You beat me to it.
16th of March, which put him on more goals, because I missed that because I was in Mauritius watching it on my phone or listening to it on my phone. So yeah, Jovan wasn't taken off. The subs came on. We kept the pressure on. Everyone hates a short corner. So when we got a short corner, there was all those sighs, including me, go, just get it in the mixer. And then I think it's Eric Ring, curls it in. Jed Ward, he's a little bit unlucky because it's a header from Pordy, I think. And Ward kind of tries to push it out, but it's with a kind of a flat hand almost. You can't get, it's not like you can punch it. Joe Gardner has a couple of stabs. It falls to Jovan. And okay, this is the Jovan show at the minute, isn't it? But I think Richard Godson says that he showed some really nifty footwork for his 3rd goal. And when you watch it back, he does, because he shuffles it slightly. There's 2 defenders. He fires through a crowd. 6 weeks ago, that just bounces off a player and comes back out. But for a player and a team that are already 4-0 up, oozing confidence, it goes in the back of the net. And there was no moment. I don't think even. When was it? Was it the last Sorensen Charlton? Who was the Hakiba Delican Charlton moment, wasn't it? I found it even more satisfying than that. It was just like, yes, Jovan, 5-0, hat trick, academy graduate, game over.
Yeah, I was so pleased, just for him. I was pleased for him as much as, you know, pleased for ourselves. It's always nice to watch your team win. I was pleased for him as an individual more than anything else in that moment. But a couple of things, actually. Number one, agree totally on the footwork. I think, you know, this, when you're watching this live, you think, you know, it's a little bit like pinball, isn't it? And it just so happens to be his day, and it's fallen to him, and he's thrown a leg at it and it goes in. But actually, like you say, when you watch it, there's some real composure amongst chaos there by Jovan. I'd like to touch very briefly on corners, because something I noticed yesterday a few times, which I really liked. So when we got the opportunity to have a corner, like sometimes when the ball had gone like over the bar or something, like you can't do it. When the ball was able to be placed in the quadrant really quickly, the taker and one other player sprinted to get into the short corner position. Now, whether they went short or not, I think they only did it a couple of times, but they sprinted there. And I noticed, particularly for this goal, that actually, no, it was the corner before. 2 Bristol Rovers players like, oh shit, and then they then sprinted out to them. We didn't take the short corner. I think we had a header over the bar or something. But there was then so much space because Bristol Rovers kept 2 players up, which was suicidal, really, off our corners. And yeah, they kind of sprinted out, and then we went in, but there was more space then to knock it into. And then, yeah, Ring and whoever it was taking a corner, I can't remember who it was now. Or might be Ring taking it. I can't remember who he passed short to. They didn't bring two players out that time. They still sprinted over to the corner to do it. They didn't just saunter over. That was clearly part of the game plan. Is you go there and you make it, you do it quickly, commit them, and if there's a situation to exploit, you exploit it. And then it's 2v1. You're always going to be able to play that angled 1-2 when it's only one defender coming out to mark you. I just thought it was smart, and it's just something that stood out to me that I hadn't noticed at any other point in the season. It might have taken me 35, 36 games to realise we're doing it, or maybe it was a very definite ploy yesterday against a particular opponent. I think possibly the latter, considering that they always kept 2 up, which is just bizarre against us. Don't get me wrong. I understand the value in having all of your players back on a corner. Personally, I still like to have 1 up, or at least some placed outside the box ready for a counter. But to leave 2 up against a team that's so dominant as us is really, really suicidal. But obviously, we knew they were going to do that. If you then bring 2 of them out the box, just because you set up for a short corner, even if it's a decoy, then there's just so much space in that 18-yard box to be a threat from it. And we were. And yeah, it took 2 or 3 touches, but eventually it went in. And like you say, just a wonderful, wonderful moment for a young man who's, I think, been unfairly criticised. Everyone can be fairly criticised, but I think he has been unfairly criticised at times in his Lincoln City tenure. And it was so nice for him to be able to enjoy a positive experience with the supporters, and for the supporters to give him a really positive kind of moment and ovation. There was a repurposed Shadipo song to the tune of Makama, which I particularly enjoyed. And that's just nice, that when a player gets their own song, it feels like a threshold has been broken, doesn't it? It feels like, there's a bit of a milestone has been passed. So long may that continue. More of the same, please, Mr. Makama. It was very, very enjoyable.
I miss the Tom Petty song. This could be da, da, da. Anyway,
I forgot what that was.
I think we really need to go on a break and get an advert. We've completely missed that. So we will go on a break. We'll have a little chat with some of you fine YouTubers. If you're listening in at home, we'll be back in a moment. Finished on 42:10. Right, let's have a look back. So when we come back in, we'll cover. You want to cover James Collins, I think.
I want to just cover Jovan one more time briefly, just because he's our top league goal scorer, but he's also got, just so everyone's going to get.
No, don't say it now. Here. Don't say it now. You want to cover Jovan, that's fine, because
I thought I had to justify it.
No, don't bother repeating yourself. It's and James Collins, don't we? So let's have a quick look at some of the comments. So Flossie Tops is in. A very happy good evening. It will be once I get my Hunter's chicken and wedges in a little while. Ed Harrison, evening all. Neil, nice to see you at the game, mate. Good evening, chaps. Adam Bull said the last chat was about paddle. Okay. Well, yeah. Evening, lads. That is Ben. Andy S says evening, everyone. Adam Bull says that's a great sport, but hell on the knees. Should try running 18 miles. John Booth says good evening. Loving the St. Pauli top. Dean, evening all. Mr. Godson, we have said hello to. Roy Rogers says what a game yesterday. Next gen base, Ben. Jack Payne scored a shit pinger of a goal, as I believe Gaz would say. Flossie Top said it was a disciplined performance, players in best positions, tactics spot on, and the supporters got out of their seats. 5-star goals, 5-star performance. Spot on, I think that. You should be on the podcast. Dean Wagstaff, some response. Oh, this is for the goal, I think, for Jovan's goal. And he says after he'd won his first free kick, he told Spug that he would score. Spug is his son. I'm just going to skip down past a couple of comments, see if there's anyone new in. Richard Godson says Mick Harford was at the game yesterday. He would have appreciated Jovan's performance. I wonder if he was also at the game last year when Joe Taylor got his hat-trick, given that he was on loan from Luton, potentially. The 10k invested in the AI tech for set pieces has been well worth it, says John Booth. And finally, this is a question for when we come back online, I think, but is Rob Street a potential long-term Collins replacement? Seems to be a similar type of player and stature. So we'll come on to that potentially. So we'll come back in a second. We will talk about Jovan. I'll wrap the Jovan conversation up. Do we need to talk about James Collins, given that we already have a little bit?
just briefly, because you wanted to talk about how potentially successfully could be next season, and the fact he's managed to score. If it wasn't for Javon's hat trick, he'd be our joint top goal scorer in just 11 games. I think that's worth mentioning, isn't it?
And I want to pick up on Tom Hamer a little bit as well.
Yeah, cool.
But we'll try and keep that to a kind of a 5 minutes or so, because then that'll put us on 50. And what else have we got to talk about? Did we say favorite hat trick? Have you thought about favorite hat trick?
I really have no idea what to say. I'll pick a Jamie Forrest one. I think it's just which one.
So for those of you watching on YouTube, we are going to discuss our favorite Lincoln City hat trick of all time. So Chris hasn't picked one yet, so feel free to add yours into the comments and we'll shout it out when we go back online. We'll come back in on 45-25. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. We've had so much fun in the break. I don't know why you're not watching live on YouTube and listening in your car, but thank you if you are listening in your car. Obviously, it doesn't matter how you listen. What matters is that you do listen, and please do remember to like the video on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel, give us a good review on your podcast platform, all the sort of stuff that Ben normally says that I never do. Now, we're going to pick up on 3 players, I think, from yesterday's game before we move on. We were enjoying talking about it so much. We're far too far in now, but there isn't a lot of other news to pick up on, so why not? So first of all, let's wrap up the Jovan conversation. Chris?
Well, I appreciate the counter argument to this is that yes, lots of it has come in the last 4 or 5 matches, but Jovan Makama has now got not just 7 league goals and is currently our top league goal scorer, but if you look at goals plus assists, he's got 13 so far this season. Second in that tally is Tendai Darikwa on 8. So he has got 5 more goal involvements than any other player in our squad, and I think that is absolutely worth pointing out. That's in 25 starts as well. It's better than a goal or assist every 3 games on average. For someone who's 21 years old and growing into the game, I think that's incredible, because just as a centre forward, maybe not so much, but you look at it as I think he's like an inside forward would be probably the best way of describing it. He's not like a touchline winger, is he? He's an inside forward. 13 goal involvements in 25 starts, 34 appearances overall. I think we'd have all accepted that as a very, very, very good season, if that was mentioned pre-season. So I think it's just worth pointing that out. Not just his goals, but his assists as well. I think that's worth a little mention.
Yeah, I think to kind of wrap up Jovan as a whole, I think up until when he signed his new deal, I think he'd had a really good spell going up to signing his new deal in, I want to say October, mid-October, I think he signed it, because he was then injured the day that I was doing the Priory presentation, which was the day I was convinced to sign up for the London Marathon because I ran, or to apply for it. So he then got injured, and I think he tailed away a little bit, came back, missed a couple of chances, particularly Wrexham and Stevenage, if I recall correctly. Divisive character, but I think purely not because of him as a character, but because of the nature of social media. Everybody wants to have an opinion and then they stand by that opinion. And he was a player that was easy to have an opinion on because he's missed a goal, or because other people are saying, oh, well, I see a lot in this. So, you can go, oh, well, here's my hot take. I don't see a lot in it. And then people stand by that. And some players easily blend into the background. You will never have this kind of argument about Dom Jeffries, for instance, because he plays left wing back. He's kind of in and out of the side. He's not come through the academy. He wasn't one of the big marquee signings. So whatever Dom Jeffries does is never going to be as divisive, because there isn't that, here's an academy player. Here's a player who could be worth a lot of money. Here's an attacking player. Here's a player that should be scoring goals. Here's a player that should be getting assists. Here's a player that is quick. It is strong. He should be doing. Jovan stands out because of where he plays and because of where he's come from in terms of the academy, I think, which makes him particularly not a divisive character, but easy to have extreme opinions on. And then once you have if you have 2 people who have got not extreme opinions, but opinions that are kind of quite far apart, the harder you argue your opinion, the further and further you move away to the extreme right or the extreme left. And I think that's what Jovan has kind of become, not because of anything to do with him, but because of he's kind of what he is, if you know what I mean, the attacker, the young player, this, that, and the other. So it's really nice, hopefully, for yesterday, just to bring at least one side of that argument. Maybe he's actually not shit. But those of us who are waxing lyrical about him right now also do need to listen to Michael Scavala's words. There's more to come. He can be better. We want consistency. Because where was the game a couple of weeks ago where he was terrible, almost got sent off? Was it Wigan when we drew at their place 0-0, if I remember correctly? He did a silly foul and then there was a push. So we need to bring that opinion, but I need him personally. I would love to see him a little bit less of that kind of argued about figure online, because I think that will help him as a young player in the long term.
Yeah, I agree. I obviously agree with you. But let's not forget, we all want the same thing. Different people have different ways of expressing it. We all want the best thing for Lincoln City, and we all want our players to be good at football, don't we? And those opinions are all based off the fact that we all want to see a successful Lincoln City team. And when a player performs quite so excellently and just stands out as much as he did yesterday, yeah, obviously it's because of all the things you mentioned. Everyone's going to have an opinion on it, but I think it's always nice because that opinion is always kind of justified, I think, yesterday, isn't it? But it all stems from the fact that we all want him to be good. We all want him to stand out and impress every game and score tricks every match. So we all want that to happen, of course. But, I think it's just some people maybe felt like it was more likely than others. And when it does happen, it's just, it's good for everyone. Everybody wins, don't they? When it all turns out right.
Yep. I just want to talk quickly about Tom Hamer, really, really quickly, because he's actually snuck back into the side. Snuck? I think it's snuck, isn't it? He snuck back into the side quietly, unassuming kind of position. When you think about, Lewis Monsma is 1 game a week, and you've got the Adam Jackson, Sean Rowan potentially could play left centre back, with us putting maybe a Dom Jeffries at left back. I don't think that he was an obvious choice as a partner for Paudie O'Connor. But when you look to the future, Tom Hamer is the centre half that we know we will have. Paudie out of contract. Lewis, we don't know what his injury situation will be next season. You would hope that he could play more games. Adam Jackson out of contract, potentially could leave. Sean Rowan could leave the club out of contract. So I think it's quite good to see Tom in. I thought he put in a really good game. His throws are a really useful weapon. And I'm just looking forward now to him getting a run of 10 or 12 games under his belt. That level of consistency. He's got that little bit of pace. I like to see him against a bigger defender, alongside a bigger defender. So I just thought he was worth mentioning because he has snuck into the side quite quietly.
Yeah, he's going to slip back in quite comfortably, hasn't he? And his throw for me is a bonus. It's a great weapon to have. I would never like to pick a player just because they got a long throw and nothing else. But he was just really solid as a centre back. And let's not forget, he hasn't actually played much at centre back in his career. He's played a little bit as an outside in a 3, but he's more primarily played right back or left back in a back 4, or even wing back in a 5. But he looked really comfortable at centre half in a 2. And like you say, he's going to be here next year. It's guaranteed he will be a Lincoln City player next season. And as it looks currently and his current form, he'll be a very important one as well. I'd like to mention very briefly Tendai Darikwa. I thought he stood out yesterday to the same level that he stood out earlier in the season. And then just quickly, James Collins again, he's added so much, hasn't he? But I think it's worth pointing out that Makama rightly is getting all the headlines yesterday. But if Makama hadn't scored yesterday, James Collins would then be on 5 league goals, which would be the same as Ben House, Belly Kadamatri, and Tendai Darikwa. He'd be the same. He'd basically be our joint top goal scorer, but would have done it in just 11 games and 7 starts. That is some record. So if he can keep that up, or anything close to that between now and the end of the season, but particularly next season, then we've got a very, very handy player in our ranks. And yeah, like I said, Makama rightly taking the plaudits yesterday, but let's not forget that James Collins is now our joint second highest leading goal scorer behind Jovan.
James Collins is a better signing than people realise. Maybe even a better signing than certainly I realised, because at the time when he signed, you kind of think, well, 34, he's not really been playing for Derby. Is he going to come and dip in and out of the team? He could have been like a Lee Gregory figure who was great for Mansfield but picked up an injury because of his age. But bear in mind, I think he's a bit younger than Lee Gregory as well. I think that he could well be a signing of Jamie Forrester magnitude. And then funny, we'll probably talk about Jamie Forrester in just a second. In that, he's coming here of a certain age, but actually he's still got so much to offer. He is a player that will naturally score goals at whatever level he plays. He has scored in the Championship. He scored so regularly in League One, League Two. He's still got it. He's obviously driving standards. He was mentioned a couple of times in the post-match interview. And as John Booth says, great piece of recruitment from Jez. What I would say, of course, is whenever we're talking about bad recruitment, we always say it's not just Jez, it's the full recruitment team. So when we're talking about good recruitment, I'm going to stress exactly the same. I don't want to be seen to be playing one side and not the other. It's just a great piece of recruitment across the board. And when you're trying to squeeze as much as you can out of a relatively limited budget, to get a player in like that in January who will score you goals, who looks like he's staying fit. He doesn't start every game. There's a reason for that, so that we can keep him fit for the ones that we need him to start. So I agree. I'm pleased you mentioned him. He was outstanding yesterday, and hopefully, as we surge towards finishing on something like 60 to 65 points, which is, I think, realistically where we may well finish, James Collins, I think, will be pushing himself towards the 10-goal mark. And who knows, he could be as influential for us this season as Joe Taylor was last season, but we won't lose him in the summer.
Yeah, that's massive. And we probably won't do it by almost getting into the playoffs either. But hey, it will still be a positive. But it allows us to look forward to next season a little bit, doesn't it, as well, and realise that we've got something in the building that's going to be really good. A couple of other things. I've got through 56 minutes and not mentioned anything about stats. So, in order to keeping up with to say your face, two things. You'll like this. You'll like this. Because looking at next season, it's looking at things like, well, what are we doing well? What can we keep doing? We've mentioned the negatives quite a bit recently. But two things really jumped out at me yesterday. Touches in the box. It was quite funny because we had 32 touches in Bristol Rovers box. They only had 5. So I thought that I'll just double check. Where are we in the league table for that? So, no stat on its own tells the whole story, but that's quite a good one. Is how often do you get the ball and you make the first contact when the ball is in the 18-yard box? That's quite a big one. And we're 5th in the league for that. We've had the 5th most touches in opposition box. So that's a good sign. And also, we've had the lowest percentage of our shots from outside the area compared to any team in League One. So what that means is we've had more shots from inside the area, or a higher percentage of our shots come from inside the 18-yard box. You're more likely to score when the ball's in the 18-yard box than when the ball's outside the 18-yard box because you're close to the goal. Theoretically, it should be easy to score a goal. So yeah, our percentage of our shots that are from good goal-scoring areas is literally the best in the league. In some games, could we have got more shots away? Obviously. Could we have taken those chances when we got them? Yes, of course. We all know that there's been challenges throughout this season. But actually, that really jumped out to me because at this stage of the season, 36, 37 games in, these sort of numbers do start to tell a story now, and they do show real definite trends and attributes of teams. So if we can keep an element of that going forward, stop giving away some soft goals as we have, because generally we defend quite well, we're quite solid, don't give many chances away, but we have had a habit of gifting opposition goals. We're all right, Gaz, aren't we? We're all right.
You don't need to tell me. We talk about it all the time, don't we? I was saying it yesterday. Everything between the two boxes that can be coached, we're all right. We've had some off days, but it's those final little minutes, isn't it? So we're actually on 55 minutes ish. We did have a question, which was all the way back up here. John Booth said, is Rob Street a potential long-term Collins replacement? Seems to be a similar type of player in stature. Personally, as yet, I haven't seen enough of Rob Street for me to be able to adequately answer that. He's obviously having a good spell in terms of goals away at Doncaster, but I do need to see more of him. I'm not so sure a long-term Collins replacement in like a 4-2-3-1 with Rob Street as a sole striker, but is he long-term likely to lead the line for Lincoln City when James Collins will not anymore? Potentially. That's why we've given him a 4-year deal. So there's kind of a yes and a no, as in a yes, I don't think we're just going to say, right, he's a like for James Collins, but can I see him being a regular starter for us? Yes.
Yeah, I can see him being a regular starter for his next season, to be honest. But I would say he's more suited in this shape, in the 4-2-3-1 that we play, in the role that Jovan's currently playing. Because, like I said, Jovan's he's not a touchline winger that just gets to the byline like Harry Anderson used to and then just get crosses in. He picks up the ball and drives inside. or of course runs in behind to chase. That's what Rob Street's good at, isn't he? So in a front two, I think Rob Street will thrive. I think in a 4-2-3-1, currently he'd probably fit the role that Joe was playing quite nicely. But again, I'm with you guys. Can I see Rob Street leading the line, not necessarily in the same way that James Collins does, but playing up front for us next season? Yes, I do. I certainly think he'll be part of our squad, but it's worked out really well for him this current loan at Doncaster.
Now let's talk about hat tricks. Very, very quickly. Nobody had put their favourite. I think maybe Ben did, but I don't know how far. Maguire at Sunderland was his favourite. Since August 1980, there have been 36 hat tricks scored by Lincoln City players in the Football League, the National League, and the 3 cups that we're in now. I haven't included the FA Trophy because it was a ball ache to find out, but I think there might even been an Alan Power hat trick in the FA Trophy, but it doesn't count if you're playing like, I don't know, Melchester United or whatever's in the FA Trophy. Now, I do have a favourite hat trick. My favourite hat trick was in my second ever game in December 1986, and Gary Lund scored it. And it was we beat Swansea 4-0. And the other goal was scored by Steve Buckley from the penalty spot. I was telling somebody the story on the way home from that game. I was eager to show my dad how the goalkeeper missed the ball. So I dived across the path and onto the grass to show him how I missed the ball. And I dived straight in a dog shit. And it was all caked up my arm. And I had to drive all the way back to Rugby, caked in dog excrement, before Dad could wash me off. So that was one of my favourite hat tricks. But of course, the other one would have to be Simon Yeo away at Grimsby, because you go 2-0 up at Grimsby. They score twice in 9 minutes. The tide is turning, and then bosh, he bangs another one in within what, a minute of them scoring to make it 3-2. And that was just a utterly phenomenal hat trick. Just while Chris is before Chris comes back in, Jovan McCarma's hat trick was the first scored at Sincil Bank by a player that we own since October 2006. All of the other hat tricks scored at Sincil Bank by Lincoln City players have been loan players, and that includes Joe Taylor against Bristol Rovers, Brennan Johnson against MK Dons. Now, we did own Johnny Margaret, but that was not Football League. I'm talking only Football League here. Ashley Grimes was on loan as well. But we have had some Football League hat tricks, non-National League hat tricks at Sincil Bank, which include Liam Hearn against Macclesfield, obviously Johnny Margaret against Southport, and I think Sean Newton potentially against Alfreton, but that might have been away. And Benny Tomlinson against Halifax. So your favourite hat trick?
I was going to say, we didn't own Johnny Margaret for long after his hat trick, did we?
No, we didn't. No.
I don't think he played again, did he? That was literally off the back of that. He got his move to Scunny.
And then came back on loan.
Oh, yes, of course. Anyway, I'm going to go Jamie Forrester at Mansfield.
Brilliant, when he scored 4. Also, Jamie Forrester is the only one out of all of those, I think, who got 2 penalties as part of his hat trick. That's going back to the year 2000. Lee Thorpe scored a hat trick at Sincil Bank against Morecambe in the Mickey Mouse Trophy, whatever it was called, on Grant Brown's testimonial. But actually, do you know, between November 1991 and November 2000, which was Tony Lawman's hat trick against Scunthorpe and Lee Thorpe's against Morecambe, there was only 1 hat trick scored at Sincil Bank. Do you know who it was by?
No, of course don't know. Please tell me.
Hi, Gareth Ainsworth in his
final
ever game at Sincil Bank.
I don't have an encyclopedic Lincoln City knowledge like you do. I don't have it.
Right. First of all, massive point of business. Massive congratulations to Bubs, who yesterday photographed his 57th Lincoln City game of the season, including youths and women. And they now has racked up, I think, let me have a look at the WhatsApp we exchanged. I'm pretty sure that is his 200th game in 3 seasons. And in total, he's now photographed 1,160 Lincoln City games.
Outstanding, Bubs. Absolutely outstanding.
And finally, I don't know unless you've got any other business, Chris, at the moment. No. So just want to go on to my running and raffle again, if that's okay. So we are running a raffle for my London Marathon. fundraising. Got some great prizes. There's a former player's shirt that's signed by players that played in the Lincoln and Bradford Memorial game last season. There is a signed squad shirt, which is literally right here in a bag. That's not framed, obviously. There is a gin box. There is when I say gin box, it's a bottle of gin with other bits of ginny things in it, like mixers and stuff. There is a potentially a signed football coming from the football club, but there is something coming from the football club. There is £100 Bailgate clothing voucher. There is a limited Imp Toons signed drawing as well. So there's some really good prizes. To enter this, there is a post on the website. But if you PayPal gazhutch78 at gmail.com with £5 per ticket, I'm not going to do any of this £1 per ticket and you get 5. It's £5 per ticket, nice and straightforward. Then I will enter you onto a spreadsheet, which will be in the comments any second now. So you can see everybody who's entered. I know I'm literally doing this as we speak. So there are the comments. It's gazhutch78.com. There will be a post pinned on the website shortly as well. So please do enter that. We've got some phenomenal prizes. I'm also giving away some copies of the book that I am writing, the running book, which is documenting my London Marathon training and some bits about running as well. Just trying to get people into running, which makes me sound like a preachy type person, and why not? Because I am. Also, apologies to everybody that I told that I've got to run 20 miles next weekend. I haven't. It's the weekend after. This weekend's just 13 miles, so that should be really easy, shouldn't it?
For you these days, yeah, very easy.
Yes. We've just had another prize added. So Ben is going to do a big SB model. That's Sinsel Bank model, I'm assuming, not like a model of somebody with the initials SB. I can't think of anybody with the initials SB at the moment to make an amusing joke about. So Ben's just added a prize to that as well. So thank you to everybody who has entered already. Huge thank you, by the way, to everybody who came up and kind of asked how my training's going and stuff like that. I do really, really, really appreciate all of the support. For those of you who haven't asked, you're going to find out now. So yesterday, as I said, I did run 18 miles. I could feel that I could probably have done another 5 or 6 miles with relative ease. So that only leaves 2 to struggle through at London. So today and yesterday really were the first days where I've actually looked at 26.2 miles and thought, I can do that. So that is phenomenal. What I'm really scared of is April the 28th, the day after the marathon. Because I don't know what the hell I'm going to focus on. I think I'm just going to have to book another marathon, because I think if I wasn't running 3 days a week at the moment, given the break I've just had and everything, I'm not quite sure how I would have got through the last few months. So yeah, it's brilliant. So if you're struggling, run. There you go. Anything more from you, Mr. Lamming?
Probably a little reminder that we've got our live one coming up, which we all not forgot about.
No.
Oh, have we not? Okay.
No.
I'll be quiet. Sorry, everybody.
Yep. Thank you. Anything else from you, Chris?
No.
Brilliant. Right. So that was episode 366 of the Stacey West podcast. We basically just talked about how great Lincoln City were and how great Jova Makama is. Doesn't need any more explanation than that, does it? Up the Imps.
Up the Imps.